Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be replacing the Seacocks and skin fittings on our boat, which is a Bavaria 350 built in 1992. Skin fittings and Seacocks are extremely important, and if they go wrong, this can happen. So why might that happen? Well, unfortunately lots of boat builders and boat owners are using standard brass fittings below the waterline rather than dezincification resistant brass or bronze. Now the reason for that is it's cheaper, but over time the standard brass fittings leach out their zinc content and you're left with a very soft and brittle material. It's very high in copper content, and what can happen is the Seacock or the skin fitting can just snap off because it has no mechanical strength left. So this is obviously extremely serious. That can sink a boat extremely quickly. In my mind, it's ridiculous that we're using these materials in this day and age for such a critical application. So let's have a look at the Seacocks and skin fittings on this boat. This is our forward head, and these are the three Seacocks and associated fittings. We've got 2 3/4 inch and 1 1.5 inch. This is the intake for the marine toilet, that's the outlet for the marine toilet, and this is the sink drain. Now they look not too bad, however appearances can be deceiving. This one here, if you operate this lever, nothing happens. That does not rotate the ball inside the ball valve, so that valve is still in the fully open position. So of course if you've got a problem one day and you've got water gushing into the boat, you can't shut that valve off, which is very dangerous. Now I don't like Seacocks. They do a very important job, they're necessary, but I'd like to have as few of them as possible. So I have a cunning plan here in the forward head. I'm going to get rid of the sea toilet and I'm going to replace it with a chemical toilet. That will mean I can get rid of this and this. I'm going to glass up the holes and we'll only have one Seacock remaining here. So I think that's a better system, and we still have the marine toilet into which the chemical toilet can be disposed of. We're actually not going to use chemicals. I've been reading about this online. You can use brewer's yeast to break down the substances. Apparently that controls odours and everything else, and it's you know, it's completely chemical free, which is better for the environment and also better for your pocket, because the brewer's yeast is very cheap and you can get a whole box of tablets that'll last about a year, and they don't take up much room on your boat either, so it has lots of different advantages. This is our galley, and look what we have under here. Ooh, rust stains and 2 extraordinarily corroded and ugly and non-functioning Seacocks. This is what I'm talking about. They're using materials to build boats which in my mind is completely inadequate. Yes, these have probably been fitted since the boat was built, so they're getting on a bit, but still, just look at the state of them. And these again are safety critical components. If one of these fails, the boat could sink. And even if, regardless of the position of the handle, if the position here is closed and this is closed, you go away from your boat, your Seacocks are closed, you think you're safe. But if it shears here, or if a leak springs here underneath the Seacock, then this doesn't do anything, and that could flood your boat, and you may return to it and find your mast sticking up out of the water. So why are there 2 Seacocks here? Well, we've got a double sink arrangement in our galley, and incredibly they used a Seacock for each sink. So there are 2 Seacocks there just to simply drain 2 small galley sinks. Now I don't like that setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a T-piece into the 2 sinks, and I'm going to drain them both through this Seacock. And this Seacock, I'm going to steel it and use it to add a second source of cooling water to our engine. We have a Volvo Penta sail drive, and that draws its raw cooling water up through the sail drive itself, through some fairly small holes, and you know, if they were to get blocked, then the engine would overheat and destroy itself. So I think it's a good idea to have a second source of cooling water, and this gives me a great opportunity to get one. So I will be, as I say, plumbing the both sinks into that one and stealing that for cooling water for our engine. This is our aft head, and we have the same arrangement as the forward head. At the moment there are 3 Seacocks, outlet for the sink, and then inlet and outlet for the marine toilet. You can see that one is absolutely destroyed from corrosion. So yeah, these are in urgent need of attention. Now I have another cunning plan here. I'm going to eliminate one of these 3 Seacocks, and we're only going to have 2 remaining. And in order to do that, I'm going to be teeing in the sink outlet into the toilet inlet. Now it's going to have a valve on it, so we will be able to isolate the 2. So when we want to flush the toilet, we will close the valve on the sink outlet, and then we shall flush the toilet. That gets rid of a Seacock, which in my mind is always nice, and it also means it has the added bonus of meaning we can flush through the toilet using the sink. So if we want to put some kind of treatment into the toilet, we can use the sink as a way of introducing such things into the water going into the toilet. So that's the plan. Now let's go and remove these Seacocks. I'm just about to remove these 3 forward skin fittings and Seacocks. Just before I do that, if we zoom in here on this one, if you look in this area here, you can probably see just some pink spots, and that is a sign of dezincification, and you can see the areas there with a higher copper content. So again, just more proof that these do need to be changed. There are different ways of removing these. I could go into the boat and use spanners and extensions and things to break them free, but given the state of these, I think I'd probably be there for about 3 days. So there are a couple of other ways you can do it. You can get some softwood bungs, you hammer them into the Seacocks or the skin fittings, then once they're in position, hammered home, you get a saw and you saw across. That gives you an area in the middle into which you can put a hole saw. You put a hole saw in the centre of the bung, and then you just drill in with your hole saw, and that drills down. It has to be the right size, of course. That drills down and it removes the flanged part of the skin fitting. You can then get a hammer and wooden drift and just hammer it into the boat. Now I would do that if I had some softwood bungs and a hole saw, or a set of hole saws, but I don't have them, and our budget is really stretched at the moment with this job, so I'm going to be doing it with a grinder, and I'm just going to very carefully grind off the flanges and then hammer these out. Okay, I've done the first one. It was really easy. It took about 4 minutes probably. I didn't get it on camera because the battery died at the start when I was recording, unfortunately, but I'll get some of the other ones on camera instead. I'm using a thick grinding disc here for metal, and basically you can actually be really precise with the grinder if you're careful, and you just work your way down. You'll eventually see a spot appear, and that will be the sealant in this area. Then you just gently chase that round until you've got a whole circle. That means the flange is separated from the skin fitting, and in theory, if I get a chisel, I should be able to knock off the flange, or if I get a hammer, a piece of wood, or if I go on the inside and pull around, this should pull up into the inside of the boat. So I'll do the next one, and hopefully I'll get this on camera for you. The smaller diameter Seacocks are actually a little bit more difficult than the larger ones. You've got more control on the larger ones. However, that was quite easy. You saw the flange come off, and we'll see if this one does the same. Back inside the boat, I'm about to try and pull these thru-hull assemblies into the hull through the holes rather than hammer. I just wanted to show you something here while I have spotted it myself. Basically, our brand new, really expensive camera is covered in brass filings from the job that I was doing there and filming it at the same time. So, if you find videos like this useful, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. We've got a Patreon account. You can do so for as little as $1 a month, and you know, that would be wonderful. It'd just help us to maintain our gear, buy new cameras that are going to get destroyed by the filming that we're doing, and we'd really appreciate that. So thank you very much if you're going to do that. So let's get back to work. Bit of movement, as I expected. It's going to be quite awkward, but I'll get there, I'm sure. Here we go, that's rotated. So twist it out. This is actually going to be quite easy, I think, guys. I know it doesn't look it in that video, but once I've got two hands, and I'm going to take this hose off, and then that'll allow me to spin this around and kind of unscrew it through the hole. I think it'll be quite easy. I'll be back to you shortly. This is the sea toilet inlet, so I'm not too concerned about what comes out of this one. The larger diameter Seacock outlet, I will be more concerned about the effluent there may be in it. Okay, I don't know, I may need to heat this hose. I'll try and get it off without doing that. We'll see how it goes. There we go, that was quite easy. This appears to have been bedded in with silicone on this side, which is surprising. Silicone isn't the best thing to use to seal your skin fittings. Just going to repeat that process again with this one and this one. I think the larger diameter one will probably be a lot more difficult to remove, but it shouldn't be too bad judging on how that one went. Touch wood. That was a little bit more difficult to get out, but it did come, and we'll see what the big one's like. I really hope there's no liquid going to come out of this one, but just in case it does, I've moved the camera a little bit further back. In fact, I may just try and start moving this now with everything connected. Right, I'm going to go and get something large on the outside. Okay, what I would like to do now is heat this, but incredibly I use them for about 50 different things, but I don't have a blowtorch here, so I'm going to have to go and get one later today. But for the meantime, I've just got this large diameter pole from the floor in the boatyard, and I'm just trying to lever this out with some body weight and a bit of twisting action. Yeah, I think I could have spent quite a long time here with a hammer. This kind of sealant is very good at resisting shock loads. Okay, yes, there she goes, and there is our flange. Okay, so my mission now is to go and get 4 of these and 2 of these at the best price possible, and they have to be DZR. Just come back. I wanted to buy these locally, but there was about a £20 difference in price for this valve, for example, buying it locally compared to buying online. So that's about $30 just for one component. There's a lot of these for the boat, so that adds up to more than I'm willing to pay extra to have them immediately. So I'm going to order them online, and it's getting dark. We've got a work light, but I'm going to try and get the rest of these Seacocks ground out as quickly as possible, so we'll see how long that takes. Okay, there's only one left to do, but sod's law, it's underneath the pad here on the cradle, so I'll have to speak to the yacht club tomorrow and see if I can borrow an acro from them to do that one. But if I go around to the front of the boat, we've got quite a nice effect here as a result of our work from today. Look at that! Ooh! It's like a kind of Halloween lantern effect. So I've just put in a couple of acros to support the boat and take the weight, and I've lowered down this cradle pad, and now I've got limited access, but I should be able to get in there and do this job. There we go then, that's that one done, and I've just pulled off the sealant around there so you can see it sitting proud of the hull, so there's no damage there to the hull at all from using the grinder. Same here, if I remove this, there you go, there's actually the original gel coat there from when the boat was built. So, onwards and upwards. So I've just taken the hose off and I shall see if this will unscrew. Okay, I thought that was unscrewing, but it's not. It's just rotating, not going anywhere. Well, this is moving and rotating, but it's really stiff, so I'm going to go back outside and see if there's a little lip. Maybe I've left a little lip on the outside of the flange, or the inside of the flange, which may be now on the outside of the hole, preventing it from coming in. Let's go and have a look. Here we are then. There's some horsehair sticking out, which was put in there on assembly, so I'll pull that out of the way because obviously that's going to be causing some resistance. And I think there is actually a slight lip there. You can just see just here that there is a little bit of an outside edge there that can be taken off with the grinder. So I'll get the angle grinder on there very carefully and just trim that little bit off, and I'll get rid of some of this horsehair too. I believe it's horsehair, could be something else, some other naturally occurring material. There we go then, that took some welly. I'll now take the two small ones out. That was a lot easier. This would be really easy if you had good access, but because I'm working through a small hatch here, it makes it 100 times more difficult. And no doubt, actually we're quite lucky here in this area. I think it's going to be very difficult once I get under the galley there, because there's only about an inch of clearance around where I'm working. I hope if you're doing this job on your boat, you've got some room to do some wiggling. We have to go and take some clothes off. I'm boiling. Right then, I've changed into a bikini. I'm only joking, I'll just take my overalls off. And see if I can get this flipping hose off for a start. This would be the time to get a hairdryer on this, but I don't have one. Or a heat gun. Well, as you saw there, I just managed to smash our camera with a Seacock, and it appears that the touchscreen is no longer working. This is an expensive camera, so that's not good news. And if it is broken, Rossella is going to kill me. This is what, 4 months old? We've had it about 4 months. So this is our camera. Fortunately on the front here I do have a UV protector, so this will unscrew. So this piece that's taking a hit here will just unscrew and I can get another one. However, the big problem that I've got is the this camera has a flip up touch screen, and as you can probably imagine, this touch screen is very important. It does lots of things, it focuses, it's pretty essential, and unfortunately the touch screen is no longer working. So I've broken our camera. So the bad news is I'm going to find it very difficult now to film the rest of the jobs on the boat here, because this camera is going to be kind of crippled. The good news is I can probably fix this myself. I will buy a replacement touchscreen, and it shouldn't take too long to fix, but I have to wait for that to arrive, and usually if you buy them at a good price they come from a long way away and they take a while to deliver. So there we are. I should have seen that coming. I'm really annoyed at myself. I shouldn't have had the camera there. But hey ho, these things happen, so it is what it is. Like I say, I'm fortunate that I can fix this and it's not going to have to go in the bin. But yeah, not ideal. So if you're replacing your Seacocks, don't film it with an expensive camera. Well, just before I order a new touchscreen for this camera, I'm just going to have a quick look at it. If I'm very, very lucky, there's a ribbon cable here which starts up here at the LCD touchscreen and then goes down and it's connected inside the camera. It's a possibility that the screen is okay, but the ribbon cable has become dislodged at the connector. So I'm going to have a quick look and see if I can fix it without buying a new screen. We'll see. Hallelujah! Right, I just removed this little cover here and the 6 screws. That gave me access to the back of the LCD touchscreen. I wiggled around with the connectors on the back here, and as I suspected, it was just one of those that had come loose. So look at this. Oh, it's working! It's working! She's alive! She's alive! I'm about to prepare the outside of the holes now for the new skin fittings. Before I do that, I've been inside the boat and I've taped up the holes with duct tape to try and stop the dust from going inside the boat. I'm also, rather than use a flapper wheel, a flapper disc on the angle grinder, which makes an incredible amount of dust, they're like 13,000 RPM or something, so they make dust that goes everywhere. And I'm not too concerned about the outside, but I'll have to do this on the inside as well of the boat, and I don't want dust everywhere. So I've been out and I've bought myself a new tool, which is this. It's a multi-cutter. So I've got it on a sander mode at the moment. You can remove this, you can put a blade on it and it oscillates, so it cuts like a jigsaw, but it should be a useful tool to have on board. So let's see how we get on here preparing these holes. There you go. So as you can see, I didn't exaggerate there. I didn't want to take all the gel coat off. I've just given it a bit of a keyed surface. So I'll go around the boat now and do all the holes in the same way. Same again on the inside now. I'm going to remove the majority of the sealant with the scraper, and then once that's done I'll get that multi-tool and sand off any remnants. Woohoo! I've just received another parcel, and this one is the one with all the skin fittings and ball valves and all the associated bits and bobs for our thru-hull assemblies. The company I used are called ASAP Supplies. There is no affiliation whatsoever here, it's just I found them to be very professional, and that's why I'm telling you who they were. What I really liked about their website is that they describe everything really well. So I knew before I received this that it was a DZR Brass ball valve, and I also knew that the ball itself, which closes the valve, is made from DZR Brass, chrome plated. I knew the material of the seals, and that this is a stainless steel handle. So because they describe things really well, you know exactly what you're getting, which is great. So I am now going to dry fit these into the boat, and once I'm happy with that, I can fit them permanently. Now there has been a change of plan. I was going to glass over some of the holes in the hull and eliminate some of the thru-hull fittings. However, I've had a rethink because this is a new boat to us, we've not used it yet. We are planning on turning the forward head into a kind of shower room with a chemical toilet, and the aft head keep the sea toilet in there. I'm going to plumb the aft sink outlet into the aft toilet inlet. So that will be one seacock not required there, and in the forward head there'll be 2 holes that won't be required anymore because I'm removing the sea toilet. However, rather than glass those up as I originally planned, what I'm going to do is fit new through hulls and I'm going to cap them off. And the reason for that is just to give us a little bit of flexibility. There's no point in me spending time glassing these over if in a year's time I want to rejig things. We may decide that it's actually better to have a shower in the aft head, and we may want a sea toilet in the forward head. I just don't know. Until we use the boat, I don't know exactly how is best to use it. So to keep our options open, I've decided I'm just going to blank these off. There'll be a lot less to go wrong because we don't have valves and hoses and things coming off them, but they're there for the future. If I ever do want to do something, it'll just be a case of unscrewing that and then they're ready to go. So there we are. Adapt and overcome. Okay, so why is it a good idea to dry fit these? Well, basically once your sealant is set to the hull, then you won't be able to turn the skin fitting, the through hull, anymore. So the ball valve, depending on where you want your handle, you might find that when you tighten it up, it's here, and if you want it to be over here, then it's loose. So you would dry fit it in that case to make sure that when it's tight, it's in the final position that you want. I'm doing that, and I've got a secondary kind of system too. I've put a backer nut on here. Not a lot of people fit these, but I've decided to get them as extras. And basically, if you back this up, let's say we want the valve over there. We don't, but just for argument's sake, let's say we want the valve there. It's obviously loose, but with the backer nut, you can tighten that up onto the ball valve. And obviously that's not perfectly tight, but you can then tighten that into position and you can have it anywhere you like. So they're probably a useful extra to get. They're about £2 each, so $3. I think it's worth having those two, just as belt and braces. Well, I've seen from my dry fit that I'm not too happy with the position of this. If I bottom this out, the hose tail, then it ends up there. So once the hose is on here and the hose clamps, I'm not too happy with the clearance there. So I would like this hose tail to end up 90 degrees to the handle. There's a lot of debate online about which kind of sealant to use on these fittings. These are parallel thread fittings, BSP parallel threads. They don't seal themselves as you tighten them up, as they would do if they were tapered. So you need some kind of thread sealing mechanism. Old school, like they did with this boat, you have fibrous materials. They can be horsehair, there are other materials, and a kind of thixotropic substance that stops the water from getting past. From what I can see with my research, the best way to do this is to use Loctite 572. The other way is PTFE tape, for example. That's not ideal because it's very slippery. So once you've got the whole lot installed, it may be waterproof, but there's not much resistance, so you can quite easily accidentally start to undo fittings while they're in use. So that's not great for that. You could use Sikaflex 291, which I'm going to be using to bed the skin fittings into the hull. But again, the problem with that is it's basically a one-hit wonder. Once you've got these fittings installed with that, it's very unlikely that you'd ever be able to get them apart again if you wanted to. So I'm not too keen on that. From my research, like I say, this supposedly is the best thing to use. Loctite 572, it's a medium strength thread sealant. It allows you some working time. It doesn't set immediately, so you can rejig the fitting and it still seals afterwards. And if one day you ever need to get these apart with this, you can. So I'm about to use this now to put this hose tail into the desired position. Before I apply the thread sealant onto this hose tail, I'm going to clean it with some of Rossella's Pound Shop nail polish remover. This is of course acetone, and it's cheap and cheerful, and it will do the job. This will get this nice and clean and ready for the thread sealant. Okay, I've got lots of that on there now, and I'm about to screw this into the ball valve. Double check which side it is, yes. Okay, and I'll just set that in the position that I want and leave it to dry. Well, it's late at night and I'm just about to start removing these two hidden away little bad boys, which is not going to be much fun. I don't think there's not a lot of room to work in there. I've left these till last because they're the sink drains from the galley, and I'm living on board at the moment, so it's nice to have sinks that drain overboard as opposed to into your bilge. So I'm about to crack on with these now. Wish me luck, and hopefully it won't take too long. Well, that only took 30 minutes, and there was almost no blood loss, and there were no swear words uttered. So quite a good outcome really. I'm now heating up these hoses with a heater, and I shall remove those and then clean up these areas, and we'll be ready for the new Seacocks here too. Good morning, another day dawns in refit world, and today it is sunny, which is wonderful. However, it is cold, and this brings me to sealants. I'm about to fit the skin fittings today. I did buy Sikaflex 291i to use to bed these skin fittings to the hull. However, it's cold at the moment. It gets below 0 at night. It's not particularly warm during the day. Probably about 8 degrees it will get to today, 9 maybe. And the data sheet of this, I've looked into it because I only want to do this job once. I don't ever want to have problems with these, so I'm trying to do it as professionally as possible. I looked at the data sheet. You can't use this below 10 degrees C. So I'm going to take this back to the chandler, and I'm going to buy an alternative sealant called CT1. I've spoken to the manufacturer of CT1 today. They say it can be used down to 5 degrees C, and if it gets colder than that, it won't have any detrimental effects. It will just slow down the curing process. So once it warms up again, it will continue to cure. So that is what I'm going to do. And I was also advised, this is important, I was tempted to use acetone to clean the areas before using the sealant. I was told by the manufacturer of CT1 categorically to not use acetone, so that's something to be aware of. I am going to buy the product that CT1 make called Multisolve. It works well with CT1, so as I'm doing this job hopefully once only, I want to do it really well, so I'm going to buy some Multisolve and I'll clean up the areas with that prior to using the CT1 sealant. Off to the chandlery then. Okay, so I've been to the chandler, I've got some CT1, I've got some Multisolve. Now I'm going to spray all the skin fittings with this, get them all degreased before I start fitting them to the hull. And this is interesting because apparently this dissolves old sealants and silicone, and we've got some silicone. We had silicone everywhere. I've removed it all mechanically with a scraper and sandpaper, apart from the two under the galley, the outlets for the galley. I'm going to try and clean these now with this. There's quite a lot of silicone left there, so let's see how it works. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of silicone still left. All I've done is remove these two skin fittings. Haven't really done this scraping yet, apart from that which I had to do to remove the skin fitting itself. So I'm going to spray this now, see what happens. I've no idea how long this needs to work. I'm presuming you will have to mechanically remove the bulk of the sealant, and then this will just get rid of the remnants, but let's give it a minute and see what happens. Right, well that appears to be working quite well, to be honest. The silicone on the other ones was a lot more difficult to get off. I'll leave that bit there. I'll do a little test with a brush. That is pretty good. It actually eats the silicone, which is pretty remarkable because this stuff is a right pain to get rid of. Now it does say on the tin not to use this indoors, but I don't have a lot of choice in the matter. So if I start to get giddy in the video, you'll know why. Okay, well I'm going to go back to my scraping, but I think this stuff will help to get the final remnants off, so it's useful. That's that one finished. Now I would estimate that turned a 30-minute job into what, 8-minute job or something. It's pretty good stuff. I have read really good things online about this, and more importantly the CT1, which is why I'm, you know, pointing it out to people. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. The only declaration I should make is that my parents are both came from Northern Ireland, so CT1 and this multi-solve are made in Northern Ireland. That's the only link between the two of us. But so far so good. That seems to work really well. The last bits of silicone, the little bits that you're left with, actually come off with your fingernail after spraying that stuff on, so that's really handy. So get this next one cleaned up, and then we are ready to start degreasing the skin fittings and bonding them into the hull. Now, speaking of good products, I can also recommend the Loctite 572. Really good stuff. I did a test last night. This hose tail, I wanted it at a certain angle. It was nowhere near bottoming out at that angle, so I did it up finger tight, not even hand tight, just finger tight. It was very loose, and I used the Loctite 572. I've let it set overnight, and it's rock solid. So if I were to get some tools on there, I would be able to break that apart, but with the kind of forces that are involved in me messing around with hoses and installing these, it's set rock solid. So that's really good news. That means I don't have to worry about the orientation of the skin fittings themselves. I can put them in any which old way, and then afterwards with the backing nuts and with this 572 I can get a perfect watertight seal in any position. So that's another product recommendation, that Loctite 572, really good. Here's another handy tip for you. I'm doing this job on my own, I don't have a second person to help me. The skin fittings have, or thru-hulls, whatever you want to call them, they have lugs on the inside, and you can buy a special tool that goes in there from the outside and can be used to hold the skin fitting in position so that it doesn't rotate as you tighten the nut on the inside of the boat. But that takes two people, and you need to buy a tool which aren't easy to come by. However, there is a cheater way of doing it, which is, this is an 8mm combination spanner, and on the inside of the boat you can go in through the hole and you just engage the bottom of the spanner on the lugs, and you can do the same thing. You can then stick a screwdriver through the top, and then you can hold that from inside the boat, and you can stop it rotating while you torque it up to whatever torque you require. So that's 8mm for this one, and this is a 3/4 inch fitting, and for the 1.5 inch fitting, a 17mm combination spanner does the same job. Okay, I'm guesstimating the amount of sealant to put on there. This is the first one. That's how much I'm putting on. Let's see if that's a decent amount. I don't want too much because anything that isn't required will have to be cleaned off, but at the same time you're probably better spending some time cleaning off rather than have this leak. So there we have, added a little bit extra. That's how much I'm putting on. Let's see how that looks once it's installed. Now degreasing the washer and the nut and the backing nut. Make sure they're scrupulously clean as well. You can see the sealant has come through on this side. I'm just going to add some more. I'm going to bed down the washer with some extra sealant. I'm not going to go too crazy here, and I'm not going to go too high up the threads either, because I'll use the thread lock on the nuts so that if I ever need to get this off, it will be more doable. I'm now going to put some thread lock onto the bottom part here of the skin fitting, the part just adjacent to the washer. Just going to go loosely finger tight. Then I'll use my special tool. Okay. There's not a great deal of access here, so with the camera in the way it makes it a bit awkward, but I shall do my best for you. Stand by. I think I'm going to have to lie down actually. I wish I could show you the position I'm in to get here to do this. It's kind of like being a contortionist. Okay, that'll do. Perfect. I'll now clean this up a little bit with my solvent, and then that will be allowed to set completely before I do anything else with it. Some people tighten these down, not very tight, let the sealant set so that it forms a kind of gasket, and then they tighten them down further to compress the gasket, the sealant. I'm not doing that. I prefer to do this just once, and I'll now let that sealant set and do its job, and I don't want to disturb it again afterwards. I'm going to add a tiny little bead of sealant just around this edge. There we go, that's that. Now for the sake of this video I just did that one on its own. What I will do with the other ones and what I would have done with these ones is to do these three together. So I'll repeat the same process. Probably as I go along I'll modify it. Like there I saw there was a little bit too much excess sealant, so I'll put a little bit less around the flange and a little bit more on the threads. But there we are, that's the process that I'm using. If you've got a better way of doing this, leave a comment below. We're all ears. Good morning. Well, these skin fittings have been curing overnight and they're all cured now. I had a little bit of heat on there to help them along, and now I can fit a little bit of thread lock down on the bottom section all the way around. Then I'll fit the backing nut. Then I will get some more thread lock, put lots of thread lock around here, then put the fitting on, and then I can put the fitting into the required position and then unscrew the back nut, which will then tighten onto the fitting in the desired position. We're nearly finished, guys. Quite exciting. I should have called this thread sealant, shouldn't I, rather than thread lock. Loctite 572 is described as a thread sealant, but it's also a medium strength thread lock. I'm using quite a lot of this. Fortunately they didn't have any 10mm in the shop where I bought this. This is 50mm. Had they had a 10mm I would have bought that, because I would have thought that would have been enough and I would have saved some money. But what would have happened is I would have run out and I would have had to go back to the shop. So I recommend a 50mm of this. Okay, this is the angle I want, and now with the nut I can come up. Now I'm going to tighten that up, of course, with tools to get the correct torque on it. But before I do that I'm going to get rid of some of this gunk thread sealant, because if you put your tools on stuff like this all the time then they get dirty and then the whole boat gets covered in muck. So it's nice to try and stay as clean as possible while you're working. Okay, now that is mechanically locked because that's acting as a lock nut, and that's before the sealant sets. So what's also happening in there, these are parallel threads. So if you imagine the threads are kind of like this, let's say there's a little bit of movement in there. When you apply a back nut, it pushes all the threads up against the other ones and creates a good seal. And we also have the thread sealant. When that sets, that will stop any leaks and also give it some more mechanical strength too. So I will continue with the rest of these and get them all fitted. I just wanted to mention the hoses at this point. The hoses are just as important really as Seacocks. If there is anything left open, then the hose is also potentially something that could sink your boat. So I just wanted to mention this. Basically, when boats are built, they should have nice big loops going way above the waterline to prevent siphoning. But what can happen is over time hoses can droop. So you could have a hose that was originally installed which goes up way above the waterline. Is around about here, by the way, on this boat where this reinforced section is of the hull. So you could have had a hose originally that went way above that and then went to a seacock, but over time with water going through it and different temperatures, etc., they can droop, and it can droop down below the waterline, which is then potentially very dangerous. So another thing to check on your boat, or if you're doing this job, you need to make sure that the hoses, when they're installed, are going way above the waterline, like so. I'm then going to be fitting the hoses to these hose tails. Now these are nice and long, so there's plenty of room to get 2 hose clamps on there. And the hose clamps I'm taking off are these, which this part is stainless and this is stainless steel, but this part isn't. So they corrode over time, so I'm not too keen on these. I'm going to replace these with these, which are fully stainless steel. All parts on this are stainless steel, and they should be much more durable and corrosion resistant. I've just finished installing these thru-hulls here underneath the galley. There was very limited access. There's some ducting there for a warm air system and some water pipes in that area, so I didn't really have much room. I just thought I'd show you this. I'm trying to get rid of those corrosion stains from underneath where the old Seacocks were leaking. So I'm giving this a bash and we'll see what happens. Basically, it's putting some tissue paper down and then vinegar. Just putting some vinegar on there, and we'll see if the acid in the vinegar helps eat away at that rust. I'll leave that to work for a few hours and then let's see what happens. Let's see what happens, if anything. If this doesn't work, I've got another couple of things I can try. Okay, that doesn't appear to have done anything, to be honest. Never mind, it was worth trying. So I shall try some multi-solve on this. It is lifting it, but yeah, I suppose some is coming off there actually. Not great though. I'll try some Sif, which is an abrasive cream. There we go, I think that's probably the best way of getting rid of this. Yeah, that's coming off. So I'll get these cleaned up as well, because it just looks ugly, doesn't it? All those rust stains in there, and I don't want somebody looking in there in the future and thinking, oh, these Seacocks are leaking and there's rust everywhere. I want them to look in and go, ooh, look at those nice shiny Seacocks. Let's have a look at the finished job then. This is the forward head. The sea toilet has been removed in preparation for a chemical toilet. And as a result of that, we have effectively got rid of 2 Seacocks. As I said earlier, I have left the skin fittings there, and I've put a blanking cap on one and a plug on the other just to cap them off. Basically, we will live with the boat for a while and we will see if we're happy with this shower forward sea toilet aft arrangement or not. So this leaves all options open. We've got 2 Jubilee clips on there, diametrically opposed, and that's it. So extremely simple plumbing in here now, just a single hose, and that is the forward head. Underneath the galley we have the 2 installed thru-hull assemblies. On the left we have the scupper valve, which is where the secondary engine cooling is going to be, but that's not fitted yet. On the right we have the completed sink installation. So I've got a Y valve in there now above the waterline, so the two sinks now drain through that one Seacock, which I think that's a much better idea, so that you gain a Seacock for the secondary engine cooling. The sinks may block more easily, but I'm not worried about that. So that is the galley. Here we have the aft head, and we still have the sea toilet here. However, we have reduced the in-use Seacocks to just two. We've got the outlet for the toilet and the intake for the toilet stroke the sink discharge. So I put a T-piece in there, and this just means that the other one is redundant. If we're happy with the setup as it is now, we can eventually get rid of that one. But for now I've left it so that we can live with the boat and do some jiggling around if we need to in the future very easily. I was going to fit a valve into the T-piece here, and I'll explain why I didn't using a whiteboard. So this was the original setup. We had the outlet for the toilet with one Seacock, the inlet for the toilet with another Seacock, and the outlet for the sink with another Seacock. To eliminate one of the Seacocks, I was going to plumb in the sink into the toilet inlet with a valve, because when you're drawing water into the toilet through the inlet, you get a vacuum. So if you're trying to do that without the valve, then when you're pumping, instead of sucking seawater in from the sea into the toilet, it would start to suck air down from the sink through the line, and you wouldn't get a good draw on the seawater coming in. However, I do like simplicity, which is one of the reasons I was getting rid of the Seacocks in the first place. So rather than fit a valve, this is just a direct line. So there's a T-piece here, and instead of fitting the valve, basically you just put the plug into the sink. So there are only two Seacocks to operate now when you are using the aft head. You've got the outlet for the toilet and the inlet for the toilet stroke the sink drain, and the only thing you need to remember to do is, rather than operate extra valves, which is extra complication, more things to go wrong, etc., when you're drawing water into the toilet, you just need to put the plug into the sink. And that's the height of simplicity. I've tested it here on the hard, it's working perfectly as expected. We'll see how it goes in the water. I don't expect there to be any problems whatsoever. If there are, it's very easy for me to add a valve in here. And because I've left this Seacock blanked off, in all scenarios we can easily rejig and rework things and find the best way forward. It sounds a bit silly putting the plug in the sink, but it's simple and it'll work, so I'm happy with it. Haven't told Rossella yet, I don't know what she'll think of it. Now I'll try and preempt some of your questions and comments. First of all, why didn't you fit proper Seacocks? Okay, yes, I know what you mean. In the UK, there is a manufacturer called Blake's who make proper Seacocks, a kind of two-part assembly, very seaworthy and sturdy. They will last a very long time, and they're probably the best. If money was no object, I would have fitted those, but money is an object. They cost incredibly, for what they are, it's very expensive, but they cost £180 for the larger ones, the 1.5 inch, and about £150 for the 3/4 inch. So if you multiply that by 8, that's a lot of money. and I couldn't justify spending that much money on those Seacocks. That's why I didn't fit those. If you're in the US, you are much more fortunate. From what I can see, Groco, I believe, they're made from bronze, and they're a really good price, so you may have better options than us in the UK. How much did this job cost? All in all, it was about £420. So that includes £380 for the Seacocks and skin fittings, etc. themselves, and then £20 for thread lock, £10 for the multi-solve solvent, and £10 for the CT1. I did get some extra tools, but I'm not going to count them in the total because they're things that I would have bought for the boat anyway, and they're going to stay and remain on the boat for future projects. So that is that. Why am I looking so dishevelled? Well, I've been here for a while now, working long hours, and I'm away from Rossella and Emma, baby Emma. This is the longest time I've been away from Emma, and yeah, it's really hard. So I'm very much looking forward to going back home. Doing any job on a boat and filming it takes about 3 times as long as just doing the job. So if you appreciate videos like this, if you enjoy them, if you find them useful, then comment below, because that will encourage me to keep doing them. Otherwise, you know, I could be tempted sometimes to just not get the camera out and just do the job. That would be a lot easier for me, but I think people will probably find this stuff useful. That's why I'm making them. So if that is the case, then let me know and I'll keep on doing it. I'm about to make another video which is of me replacing the diaphragm on the sail drive on this boat. So it's a Volvo Penta engine. The sail drive goes through the hull via a big hole, and there's a big rubber gasket there which stops the water from coming through. These should be replaced once every 7 years. This boat has the original one from 1992, so I'm going to remove that and replace it with a new one. This is quite a common job. As I say, it should be done once every 7 years. It's expensive to get it done professionally, so I'm hoping that lots of people out there will find that video useful too. If you enjoy videos like this, then please check out the rest of our channel, subscribe if you like what you see, and also if you do feel like it, then you could support us on Patreon too. If you watch some of our videos and they save you money and you think, well, actually it'd be nice to give something back to the guys there, then you can check out our Patreon page. You can give just $1 a month, and if anybody would like to do that, that'd be wonderful. If not, no problem. Thank you for watching, and we love all our viewers, and we look forward to the next video. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Well done for getting to the end. Rossella and Emma will make much more interesting video companions in future videos, so come back for them too. Okay, cheers guys. See you next time.